Hey guys, welcome to Friday Q&A. This is going to be the last Q&A for the year, but it will be back in the first week of 2019. So if you have questions for next fortnight, so for the next Q&A, please get them in the comments here. This segment has been so much fun. I look forward to doing it every week. So thank you to all of you guys for making it possible, for all your great comments, all your great insights. It has been a real thrill. I thought I might get through like 3 of these when I started and be like, nah, no one wants to hear from me, and scrap it. But you guys have made it all worth it. Thank you so much. It's been an awesome year for me on YouTube. It's been awesome, basically, you know, getting to chat to so many of you guys and interact with you. So thank you so much, and I'll get it out of the way and say, hope you guys have an amazing holiday season. I hope you all stay safe and spend some much needed time with your loved ones. Till then, let's do some questions. Do I ever think of minimizing my gear setup and just going down to like a single guitar and an amp, like something like a Charvel with one humbucker or a Les Paul Jr.? Oh man, I reckon at least once a week I think about doing this. I'll look at all the guitars in here and just go like, what am I doing with my life? Why don't I just pick a guitar that I like? But I have gotten a lot better about that. A lot of the time now when I play live, I mean, I just take my AX8, a cable, and a guitar. Sometimes I take 2 guitars in like a dual gig bag, so it feels like one guitar so that I've got a backup. But yeah, I think the last maybe 2 or 3 years of my playing, I've actually actively tried to worry less about the gear that I actually use, which is kind of funny considering I do like a gear-based YouTube channel, so I'm talking about gear all the time. But in terms of like actually taking stuff to gigs, I've definitely minimized that. And yeah, I reckon probably at least once a week, normally at a gig, I'm like, this is all I need. I don't need all this other stuff. And then during the week, I have the opposite thought where it's like, oh, it's so awesome that I've got that guitar lying around because I need it for a particular guitar part that I'm recording or a particular gig that's coming up. So yeah, it crosses my mind. I think there's like a bare minimum as a working musician that you need. You do need a couple of guitars, especially if you're doing a lot of recording. Like, you need a Les Paul and you need a Strat and you need a Tele and you need an acoustic. There's a few other types of guitars that I think you really need. Yeah, they don't have to be Gibsons or Fenders, but that style of guitar, that kind of voicing. So I guess because I see them as tools, it's like, yeah, you need some tools in your shed. There's not one tool that does it all, but you also don't need an entire like Bunnings warehouse in your house just to you know, record some guitars or something. So the gist of this question is reamping, splitting the signal up into multiple signals and applying essentially what I gather from the question, multiband distortion, and how would we achieve this on something like the AX8? To be honest, the whole multiband distortion approach on guitar I've never played around with. Do it all the time for bass though, the idea being that, you know, you split say below 800 hertz to a clean bass amp or just straight to like a DI and a compressor, and then above 800 hertz is a really common crossover frequency. You send that to like a distortion pedal or a Sans amp or a guitar amp or something like that, and then you blend those 2 signals together for a really kind of killer bass tone. To be honest, I've never really run across that situation where I've needed it for guitar. I can understand why it would be important for like 8 strings and beyond, so that's a cool thing. But what I would recommend there on the AX8 is if you wanted to do that, maybe think about splitting the top end, say to an actual amp, and for the low end, maybe send that to like a chain with like a filter block, use the filter block to split it out, and then like a compressor and maybe like a distortion pedal. Try the Dark Glass B7K model because that sounds really good on bass. So you can try it on the low end of the guitar, which would be like the mid-range of the bass. That's how I would suggest it. But otherwise, yeah, I don't have a huge amount of reason to do that. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it. You know, my application, your application are very different. What is making that noise? Would I be up for you guys sending me Axe FX presets and kind of like review them or have a listen to them? I spoke about this, feels like maybe a month or 2 ago, where I basically said, yeah, send in your AX8 presets and I will try them out. So I'm more than happy to do that. I think the cool thing, as you mentioned in the question, is that tying it back to like videos I've done during the week. For example, this week I talked about the reverb block and the 2290 delay. So if you guys want to go and make a preset based around, you know, an amp with a 2290 delay and your favorite reverb, send it to me and I'll basically just go through and kind of, we can maybe recap on some points. I think that's not a bad idea at all. What are my thoughts on ENGL amps, heads like the Powerball and the Fireball? I have to say one of the best live guitar sounds I've ever heard in my life was Vivian Campbell playing with Last in Line. We played a festival with them 2 or 3 years ago now, and he was just using 2 ENGL heads, plugging a Les Paul straight in, and that thing was just absolutely oh my god. I mean, it's Vivian Campbell playing the guitar, so of course it's going to sound good, but yeah, that was one of the best live guitar sounds I've ever heard in my life. That was so good. So yeah, I don't know which ENGL he uses, but it sounds great. Steve Morse is another guy I've seen live as well. I know he uses ENGLs and they sound great. I would really like to get a Powerball or a, what is it, the special edition or something like that. Basically, yeah, there's a couple of ENGLs which I think I kind of went off them for a while. I remember when they sort of first came out, or they were available here in Australia, a bunch of people bought them, and they've kind of got a really dry sound to them, which I really liked at the time, and then kind of went off them as I got into like different styles of music and different amps. But I kind of come full circle, and now that I have used them a lot in the Axe effects, I would like to get an actual real one, and definitely want to demo some ENGLs. So if you're in Perth and you got an ENGL, hit me up. I would love to demo one. How old are you, mate? Have you tried the positive grid stuff? How old do you guys think I am? I would just love to know, so leave a comment and try to guess my age. I will reveal it in the next video. That's kind of cool. And have I tried the positive grid stuff? Yeah, I've tried Bias, and it was cool, but A/Bing it against a couple of other plugins, like, to be honest, I wasn't super impressed. It's a cool format, and for something like an iPad or something like that, I think it's, you know, the like implementation is really cool, but just for kind of anything other than mucking around, I don't think I would ever record anything with Bias or play it live, just because there's other plugins that I like more, like Spark and Reaxis or the Fortin Nameless. It just kind of feels like they're like maybe 1 or 2 steps kind of behind where other plugins are, because those other plugins I mentioned sound amazing and sound like amps, which is pretty cool. And then I haven't tried their actual hardware, but again, it just kind of seems like it's maybe 1 or 2 steps behind stuff like the Axe effects or even the Helix. So yeah, I have tried the positive grid stuff. I mean, change my mind about it, tell me what I should or shouldn't be doing, but I wasn't blown away by it. What do I think about the Thordendal amps on the AX8 and the Axe effects? I really, really like them because I used to use an Axe effects Ultra, and I loved the Recto model on there. My little hack was that I would change the tone stack to an active EQ, and I toured America with that one, toured Australia with that one, and also toured Europe with that Axe effects Ultra using that Recto patch, and it sounded amazing. And the Thordendal amps kind of get the closest to that kind of Axe effects Ultra tone that I had, which I like dialing up from time to time. This is what they sound like. Have I ever used a parametric EQ at the end of my chain? I use this all the time in 2 different ways. One is essentially to pull out really harsh frequencies from whatever cab IR I'm using. For example, the main IR that I use is actually an impulse that I made of my main recording cab using a 57, a 121, and a 421 on a Marshall straight cab with vintage 30s, and there's a really harsh spot at around 3.3K and another really harsh spot at about 5.5K. So what I do is I pull a 2 to 3 dB gain reduction there with a really sharp cue, so that when the sound guy at a live gig gets it and he sort of does his thing, those frequencies aren't going to get like massively amplified. And I've got a video about this, and Hardcore Music Studio has a really great video on how to find these frequencies, so I would recommend that. I've also got another video just talking about EQ for the AX8 way back. So that's one thing that I do. I put that on most of my live patches. And then for a solo boost, I've covered this in my like solo boost strategies series of videos. Basically bump around 2K by 1 to 2 dB and raise the overall level. That's what I do. But I'll also high and low pass at around 120 Hertz and about 6.5K live, because when you turn these sounds up, I mean, it will sound really good without it, but when you turn these sounds up, they're kind of like fizziness and the boominess can become way too much in a loud live band mix. And I find that cutting at around those frequencies, I mean, I did this, if you watch my Uberschall preset video, I talk about this and talk about parametric EQ. And when I set up my guitar at the gig we did on Saturday with Living Colour at the Astor in Perth, which is a huge room, super loud PA, there wasn't any of that like, ugh, it hurts my ears kind of, you know, harshness going on there, which I know a lot of people who have tried my patches in the past mention that, like when they play it really live, it's kind of a bit, you know, just like ice picky or something like that. So if you do find my patches a bit ice picky, use those high and low pass tricks. Anyway, this is what that particular EQ that I was just talking about sounds like. Have a listen to it at low volume and it'll sound like it's making the guitar really dull, but then have a listen to it with your speakers cranked and it will not hurt your ears. How would I go about getting new music out there? Essentially, what you're going to be doing these days, I've talked about this in other places, but you're going to be giving your music away in order to try to sell merchandise or in order to drive people to your band's content, whether it is you running a YouTube channel where you talk about guitar gear. So, you know, you definitely want to go and get those Ragdoll albums, because that's essentially what I'm doing here. You know, I always try to drive people to my actual music. If they like the gear videos and they like the tones, I want them to hear those tones in the context of actual music that I like making and like playing. So making content around it or making music videos. You know, you can go and watch the Ragdoll music videos, and the idea there is that someone hears us on Spotify or something, they might look us up on YouTube, they'll watch the video and be like, wow, this is really cool. We should go and see these guys on tour. We should go and see them at a show. Maybe I'll buy a t-shirt. But yeah, essentially, whichever platform or distribution service you use, you're not going to be making a lot of money, if any money at all from it, especially with streaming, but you want to use that to draw people to your like merchandise like t-shirts or hard copy CDs, and nowadays, more importantly, actually get them to shows. So this question is a little bit vague. It's basically saying, what would I choose between the new unreleased AX8, which isn't even a thing, you know, the speculative AX8, or something else. And I don't know if they mean the current AX8, which I have, or if they mean the AXFX 3. So an AX8 updated with all the AXFX 3 algorithms would be amazing, basically. Even if it's a sort of same relationship that the AX8 has to the AXFX 2, like if they can add stuff like the new amp block with all the new features like the preamp boost, and stuff like the updated cab block with like the room emulation and the denser, lusher reverbs and a bunch of the new effects, and multiband compression, which would be a game changer if they could add it to a floorboard, then I would definitely prefer that over the current AX8. Whether I would prefer it to an AXFX 3 obviously totally depends on the specs. The AXFX 3 also has like 4 stereo ins and outs. It's got a USB interface attached to it, so it's super handy for reamping, for recording, for me doing demo videos, writing, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's probably a case where I just want to own both and keep the AX3 in the studio and use the speculative AX8 live. What I think would be really cool is if they came out with something like the size of the HX Stomp or the amplifier box, where it's basically like a few blocks, but it's got the Fractal amp and cab modeling in there. That would be a game changer, because then for fly gigs, I could just put it in my guitar case and life would be so easy. I'm really jealous of Ryan, singer and bass player from Ragdoll, because he just uses a little Sans amp and it fits in his guitar bag. So that's something I would love to see, and I would definitely just run out and probably buy 2 of them just cause. Everyone's talking about shredding. What about writing riffs, especially in the style of Children of Bodom and Nightwish? I just have to say, I loved Nightwish when I first heard them as a teenager. I bought all their albums because I just never heard anything like that. And I also really liked Children of Bodom. They were one of the first like screamy bands, well, bands with screamy vocals that I ever got on. into. And yeah, I mean, Alexi's just an insane guitar player. His soloing stuff's so good. But two things that I would suggest, and I'm going to cover this in a lesson later on, so I won't try to do it now, is if you've got cool chords that you're playing, you can turn those chords, play the notes individually, and then you've got an arpeggio, so you could play a riff based around an arpeggio. Again, that's very sort of European metal style, whether it's, you know, the kind of like death metal-y stuff like Children of Bodom, or if it's melodic stuff like Nightwish. You could say break down a minor add 9 chord in the key of, say, an E, which would be the notes E, F sharp, G, and B, and you could turn that into a pretty cool riff using those notes as the basis of your riff, and then you could go and play the E minor add 9 chord in between there and use that approach for a bunch of different chords. So that's how I approach a lot of like riffs. I always kind of try to think of how the notes relate to the key center. And then if you're looking to like play more extended chords and stuff like that, start by playing power chords and then thinking about notes that you can put on top. For example, when you're playing in drop D, if you go and watch my video where I broke down a bunch of different ragdoll riffs, a lot of my approach is like playing a melody note in the high register and playing a power chord underneath all of it. So maybe that little ragdoll riff lesson video, which I did a few weeks ago, would be really handy for you. So this one starts off as a comment and also says that for Christmas you're going to be buying some Ragdoll albums. So I have to say thank you so much. Thank you for supporting what we all do. It all means a lot, and every little album that we sell is some fuel that goes in our car that helps us get down the road. So legendary. Paul Chapman UFO. Yeah, actually pretty good. Paul Chapman's a really, really good guitarist. He kind of gets overshadowed by the fact that Schenker was in UFO because Schenker is a demigod. And what about some riffs or licks in the key of German melodic metal? Well, it is time for Lick of the Week. I did do a Schenker lick a few weeks ago, so I won't do that. But let's do like a kind of 80s Euro metal inspired lick. Okay, here's the lick of the week. Hopefully this sounds and feels like German heavy metal from the 80s. I saw the Scorpions a few weeks ago. They were amazing live, and I've always thought that Matthias Jabs is such an underrated lead guitar player. He kind of like lives in the shadow of the fact Michael Schenker was in the Scorpions, but and Uli Roth as well. But I think out of all the Scorpion stuff, it's all the stuff that Matthias played on that I really like the best. So he is like an underrated legend, I think. And this is something, to me, that he would play. So here's a little lick in the key of E minor. I'm going to start by bending the B string 15th fret by a tone, and I'm going to play 12, 14, 15 on the E. Then we're going to do this little lick where we hammer on from 14 to 15 and then pull off 14 to 12. And then we're going to play 15 on the B and 12 on the E. And then finish by bending the 15th again. So then we're essentially going to repeat that same idea across the B and G string, this time 12, 13, 15. So and then to end, we're on the G string. Again. So that ending is 12 on the G, 14 on the D, and then 11 on the G, 12, 14 on the D. Something like that. I didn't quite do the ending the same. Like I said again, something like that. But yeah, you know, think of like a Scorpion song. You know, he plays something like that, and I really love his lead style of like using a lot of pinch harmonics and kind of bluesy stuff in there. You also do a similar thing and just leave the bends out, so. So yeah, there you go. There's something that's not Michael Schenker, but still is a very German-inspired heavy metal lick in the style of Matthias from the Scorpions. That's Lick of the Week. I will see you guys in a fortnight in the new year. Take care, get your questions in, and thanks for watching. Cheers.